Hi, my name is Erick Miyares. I initially started in the Marine Corps and then ended up retiring in the Army. In the Marine Corps, I was with 8th Tow Company, 4th Anglico, and 323 State Platoon. And in the Army, I actually spent only in 2 units. I was 7th Special Forces Group and an Army Special Missions Unit under United States Special Operations Command. Yeah, I went to Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, and then in the GWAT did Afghanistan, Iraq, and several other countries throughout Asia and the Middle East that unfortunately I can't disclose. I came in 1991 and retired in October 2020. So I'm actually a student. So I'm a PhD student, and I just got back into cybersecurity computer role. Yeah, my PhD is in cyber psychology. So I'm actually studying the cognitive impacts of high assurance work, for example, cyber operations and intelligence professionals. Yeah, my family didn't have much of service. All I knew is that my biological father in Cuba served in the police, and then my ultimately became like a father figure. He had served in the government and in the military. I joined because I wanted to give back to the country that welcomed my family from Cuba with open arms. And so I wanted to transition from my family into a new family, and that's what the Marine Corps presented to me. I think what I would have thought that I would have gotten out of the service was the discipline, the becoming part of something bigger, and in particular joining the Marine Corps, the way I was recruited and the way that they were recruiting in Miami, that was very influential. I needed to get off the streets of Miami because at that time it was few options and I didn't like those options, so I wanted to serve. It taught me humility and that you got to continuously work on those skills you learned in training. You can take all the courses you want, but if you don't stay on top of it, it doesn't mean anything. And in particular, when you need to access that training and that experience, that's what that's meant to me. I thought about taking a life. In particular, it was interesting when I served as a Marine sniper in the mid 1990s. Right, there wasn't the global war on terrorism, and I was supporting what's called Joint Task Force 6. It's a counter-drug operation in the mountains of California, and remembering having to look through my sniper rifle while protecting police officers or law enforcement officers that were getting ready to raid a site. And so that feeling of what that would be like was pretty daunting at that time. I never want to say it's part of the job, right? And in particular, I think the hardest one is more of that mixture mixed in with the intelligence side. And sometimes it's either pulling the trigger or you the one that ordered eyes on the kinetic strike. And unfortunately, a kinetic strike that takes out several houses for a group of HVTs, there's collateral damage. And that's the hardest thing to process. It's one thing taking someone's life with your hands or with your own rifle than to order a kinetic strike. That's harder. But that then was the part about killing or the defending yourself, and it just kind of faded into all of it. And 2 days later, you're back to work. It's taken 15, 16 years later to actually start to unpack that. You reflect more on them when you see movies, right? So you see the drone operators, or you see 4 Tomahawks, being launched from a sub. And once you see that and you replay back that you were that person that developed that target package, you had eyes on, and you ordered it. You saw it, and you just then left the area. And you went on to the next mission. That never really leaves you because it isn't a video game. It is the reality of what you ordered. And for all intents and purposes, you gather the intelligence, you process it. Someone else made the final decision, but you were the catalyst that took those lives. Yeah, actually, the funniest one was my mother-in-law. They just asked, "Hey, have you killed anybody?" You could kind of sum it up to lost in translation. Mother-in-law is from Brazil, so that one stumped me. That was probably the one time I didn't have a straight answer. At least 10 times I thought I was going to die. The most impactful event was being a singleton, operating for a couple of weeks in the Middle East, where there was an emerging threat, in particular on Americans, and the lights went off in the city, and that was I thought I was done, and that's led to fears that I've had into the future of staying in a hotel, having to sleep with a pistol at my site. But you know what? That was early on. It wasn't a combat zone. It just was something that we stumbled across and small skirmish. I think the harder ones were when you know you're going into danger, when you're going into these non-permissive environments. You're working at a different level than in uniform, and the risks are higher, not only for your health, but politically, right? What happens if you get captured? Those are the harder ones, because that's when the mind doesn't stop worrying about getting compromised, which sometimes, you rather unfortunately almost die than get compromised and fail in a mission. The way I processed it, the combat ones were essentially easier because you're there. You're patrolling down the streets of Ramadi, or you're in Kabul, and you're in a dangerous situation. So essentially you're in the red, right? So your adrenaline's going, you're situationally aware. The more dangerous one are the non-permissive environments. I think it was, unfortunately, it was part of the job. It was part of the cycle. And at some point I lost track of what that meant, with all of these years of in and out, coming home, that fight flight syndrome. It never reset. So I was always in the fight until I retired. And then I started to process what those events were and what my life was like and how it impacted my family. Yes, I'd say with regards to post-traumatic stress, and I don't use the D word because I don't think it's a disorder. For me, the most impactful ones with my post-traumatic stress was doing singleton operations where I thought I was going to get compromised by myself. That has led to, in years, learning to stay in a hotel, and that was really hard, right? And that was also associated with drinking yourself to sleep and not realizing that operationally I was so wound up, so worried about being compromised and continuing to do the mission, that would impact me and my family for a decade to come. And so when it comes to post-traumatic stress, sort of an injury, they're healable. Yeah, so Pandora's boxes for me was essentially, it's a manila folder where when you came back from a trip, especially in the military, you have to fill out a travel voucher, right? You fill out your travel voucher, you put all your documents, but for me and for many, you put all the emotions, the fear, that came with that operation, and you put it in a folder and you put it back in the safe, and essentially you build this Pandora's box, right? For me, it was going to therapy at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence for Traumatic Brain Injury, where I had to start talking about 20 years of operations that were all always packaged into these little folders into my Pandora's box. And obviously when you start to open, then comes all those feelings that you would neatly tuck away and put away after a mission. But at the end, after my two friends died by suicide, that box opened quickly and all of those feelings and fears came out. It's taken roughly about 3 years to get the post-traumatic stress under control. But the last 2 years have been nothing but working on it continuously, and maintaining therapy to the point where I can go back to all of the triggers and go, how do I feel about them? How have I processed them? And more importantly, how have I shared them with my spouse to understand what was in these Pandora boxes and how it affected us every time I came home. I think it'll always be part of my life, but it will not be a shaping factor in my life. It's helping define my purpose so others don't suffer. I've been very fortunate to be very resilient as a child and as an individual. So once I learned what post-traumatic stress was, how to understand it, how to process it, how to talk about it, all it would be is just another experience in my life that I've used to gain insight, and then now I can share with others. Time away from home and deployments and training is not as bad as it even was with where my mind was, where my focus was. So I probably spent, out of every year, maybe half the year physically gone. I submitted and finally understood that I really came home on TDY, and I went forward to go home. That was my last 20 years, was always gone.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, Veterans Help Group, and we'll get right back to this episode. Some of you may be struggling with things today that weren't there before you deployed. Or maybe you're noticing this in a loved one, a spouse, a son, a daughter who went downrange and came back a little different, trouble sleeping, dealing with pain, stress, mental health issues, and maybe a whole lot more. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Let me tell you, you signed that contract, you served your country, you earned your benefits, and that's why I want you to do yourself a favor and call my friends at the Veterans Help Group today. They're here to help you get your benefits. I've navigated the VA system to get my own benefits, and it can be hard at times, and the Veterans Help Group makes it that much easier. The Veterans Help Group knows the VA because VA disability is all they do. Whether you've been denied or appealing or filing for the first time, it doesn't matter. These guys know how to get you approved for 100% of the benefits you deserve. They've done it for thousands of vets just like you and your loved ones who served. Go to veteranshelpgroup.com or call Veterans Help Group at 855-231-6144 and tell them your buddies Ryan and AJ from Combat Stories sent you. That's veteranshelpgroup.com. Veterans Help Group does not guarantee outcomes, and past performance does not guarantee future results. The company is neither a law firm nor affiliated with any part of the U.S. government, including the VA. And now, back to this episode.
How present was I when I was home? I would tell you, my wife would probably say that I really wasn't. That became really impactful once I started to go through photos. And I would look at those photos of me, of my dog, me, of my wife and kid. And at that moment, I probably knew what I was thinking about. I knew I was trying to solve a problem, or I was preparing for the next deployment, or I would go on a road trip or go to dinner and I'm still doing an SDR in my mind, right? It never stopped. And so this actually leads to some of the work that I'm doing with cognitive fatigue, right? It isn't only the physical damages, but it's also the mental, the cognitive workload that we were constantly involved in. Unfortunately, as human beings, we can only process so much, and what we don't realize, especially in the last 20 years of the global war on terrorism, between post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries, physical injuries, and you start losing cognitive bandwidth, and who actually takes the toll is your family, because unfortunately as service members, we prioritize our service before even ourselves or our family. And that's a reality you really don't understand till you retire. And then you have those long conversations with your family about where were you these last 20 years? Not on deployments, but where were you when you were home? Secondly, it is a way to, in somewhat, leave a piece of history, not only mine, but those that I served with and the organization I came from. And lastly, as an immigrant who came to this country, showcasing that what we can do when we put our minds into it and we come and we serve, that we have those opportunities. I mean, I joined from Hialeah, Miami, Florida. I just knew about Cubans, right? And Cuban Americans. And when I went into the military, I met people from all walks of life. And in 1991, they all had different reasons for joining. And I missed that. I missed understanding why people joined, why they served, where they came from, what was their backgrounds. That's one of the key things that I miss, is the people. And when you first meet them and you just understand, wow, where'd you come from? And I love the reason why you serve. There was definitely a balance between ultimately being a Marine, focused in infantry, moving into the Army, and then right away going into military intelligence, of which it was a position I really wanted to do. I liked intelligence and I wanted to carry it on forward. So the balance was that at the end, I knew I was an intelligence professional, even though I ended up becoming a special operator. But there was a lot about intelligence that I loved. I loved the clandestine operations. I loved I started off as a signals intelligence, moved on to do human intelligence, then ended up, specializing in computer network operations. So intelligence was always what I did, and I never forgot about it. Even though I did have a role as a special operator, but it was focused on leveraging and harnessing intelligence. Yeah. So one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do is prosecute or work a target set for over a year, and that was mixed in with other events that were going on, and so that was just continuously trying to work the problem from stateside, and then working it in country, and then worked it on the ground for months till we achieved the goal, all the way till the cell where you're still trying to get more information. That was tough. So one of the most courageous things that I've seen someone do is go into some really bad environments by themselves, right? They identified, and this is with regards to hostage rescues, someone that determined that they can get close to where we needed them to be, and got the approval, and went into some really hairy situations just to be knowing that what they were going to do was in hopes that we can get closer to rescuing Americans that had been captured. It's a unique tribe based on your experiences, your trust, what you've been prepared to do, the mindset, and in particular the folks that I worked with, right? Those veterans, we shared a life. We've seen losses of friends. We've seen marriages go bad. We've seen folks deal with alcohol and drug abuse. I think that's what that veteran connection is about, is you went through the suck together. You were essentially ready to, give your life for them. And it's maintaining that connection even post service. Oh, wow. I've had so many interesting, fun times. I think it's just because we always have a sense of humor in training. Some of the tradecraft training, it's just some of the stuff that you do, and you turn a corner and boom, there's the person you were surveilling, and you're like, hey, how's it going? Right? Like, you're like, you can't make that crap up. Or some of the other things are, again, to the level of the mistakes that we made while you're doing some of these super cool things, and you just kind of laugh it up, fix it up, and you keep on going, and you go back and you're like, dude, you almost screwed the whole mission up, right? But I think that's the sense of humor of all of it. So that was one of the neat things and aspects of sort of the line of work that I did, is that ability to really simulate the cultures and the language, all the way from the food, the music, the dress. So I ate what the locals ate, right? So when in Rome, be like the Romans. From chicken and rice and in the mountains of Afghanistan to funky stuff that you ate in Africa. I've had to eat it sometimes because you had to go to a certain restaurant because that was advantageous, and so when you're there you need to eat the local food or you didn't speak it. So eating was always interesting, what kind of food you ate. I always looked for a Cuban restaurant everywhere I went, but sometimes I couldn't find them. So I've eaten things that I don't even want to think about. I don't think I ever ate an MRE when I was in the Army necessarily, but I was in the Marines, and it was always a shitty environment. All of a sudden I'm eating this stuff in a package, and again, it was always cold. It's always frozen. I never really figured out how to eat them, because then you would compromise your precision, so you had to eat it cold. I think my best one was probably the spaghetti. But beyond that, yeah, those things sucked.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, HelloFresh, and we'll get right back to this episode. We love HelloFresh in our house. We've used it to feed our family of 5 for 5 years and counting, to include what we ate last night, which happened to be a barbecue chicken and coleslaw with sliced potatoes. I can already hear some of the grunts like AJ busting my chops about that being the kind of thing a pilot would eat, but it is good. Fall is here, and with it comes cooler nights, heartier meals, and the craving for something warm and satisfying. That's where HelloFresh comes in.
bringing you comforting, chef-designed recipes and fresh seasonal ingredients right to your door. I've been on a bit of a health kick for the past 2 months myself, and HelloFresh has made this easier. We select meals with high protein and veggies that have kept me a little bit leaner and more energized. They also offer 3 times more seafood on the menu now at no extra cost. I use this 3 to 4 nights per week, and you should too. The best way to cook just got better. Go to hellofresh.com/combatstory10fm to get 10 free meals and a free item for life, 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's hellofresh.com/combatstory10fm to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. And now, back to this episode.
At the point of my life right now, post 3 decades in the military, and in my age, I'm actually counting backwards, and it's kind of morbid, to when I potentially would die. And that's the time that I have right now for my son and my family and my wife to work backwards. So I never thought about time and death while I was in combat. I think about that more now because it's the time that I have left, and with the scars and injuries from my time in service, and how do I heal and grow in order to spend every single minute in time with my family and continue to be a veteran advocate. We have the response that we would go back because of the reason we joined. We wanted to serve, right? For many reasons. I think today, many of us would say, I'd say, I would take my lessons learned and apply them from the beginning so I can be much more efficient. I can last longer. I can take care of my family. I can avoid as best as possible those suicides. Combat losses, that's different. But with regards to, as an individual, the family, and then unfortunately the suicides associated with that service. But I would absolutely go back, but with those lessons learned. Discipline, right? So from time in service, I learned discipline, commitment, appreciate those that I've worked with, that brotherhood. But that's something that's been really important to me, and which I'm doing now, right? I joined the military, I continue to focus on education, and I'm doing that today, which is what we do as military people. That's why we have lessons learned. We learn from our mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We take those mistakes, and then we adjust, and we keep on going forward.